Yarek, Aisha, Behrad, 2 episodes every week. Maincast, product innovation and UX design podcast.
I like it to go into the to the podcast while we're talking, not like, hey everyone, this is the.
Yeah, that's the Joe Rogan style. Just jumping in.
It's really great. I think that's something I picked up from him. Is he's very easy when he's conversing and put his guest in such a comfortable position as well.
Yeah, because if you you click record and then you do the intro, and then the guest needs to wait for 2 minutes for them to start speaking, then they get into this recording mode, and it's just a different product.
Yeah, I really cannot do 4 hours the way he does it. I don't know. It's unbearable.
Yeah, it's hard to listen, let alone record that long.
Oh yeah, so we have a podcast. Hey everyone, this is Lincast, another episode. I'm here with Alen Faljic. I hope I pronounced
very close. Faljic.
Faljic.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's just keep it as F. Alen F.
Alen F. Sorry for this. I tried to get the names right, but I'm really excited for this conversation because Alen is doing something really different. He is the founder and CEO of Design MBA. So not business MBA, not MBA, Design MBA. So when I bumped into him on LinkedIn and I read about what he's doing, I have an understanding, but it's almost a blank canvas for me. Reach out to him directly. Hey, let's come on the podcast and let's talk about it. He was gracious enough to accept the offer. Alen, thanks for coming on the podcast. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Always interesting to talk with people who are interested in design MBA, especially like yourself. If I understand correctly, you found a website, but you didn't dig too deep into it, so we can kind of uncover it together now if you want. I mean, not the website, but just the concept and the whole thing.
It is, and I would love. I think it offers a good point of view to our audience too, because I don't know so much about it, so we can go and I have this fresh ears, so to speak, so we can go really deep into the topic.
Cool.
Alen, before we jump into, I just want to pick up on your background and your career path. Right. I see that you were with IDEO for a while. Sort of can you give us a walkthrough in your journey from the start, define the start for yourself, all the way to now?
Yeah, I mean, since always I've been interested in business. I've never even considered design as a career because design was just perceived as an aesthetical thing, and I didn't really see myself as artsy, or I never really drew nicely and so on, so I didn't consider that as a career. I was always interested in building products and businesses. So I went to a business school, and I was just taught business things, and then when I was there I just started to realize that I may not be the best fit for the suit and tie type of job. One of my first experiences, actually my very first working experience, was working as a management consultant, I was intern at a management consulting firm. And funnily enough, I think I lasted just 6 weeks. I just couldn't do it. It was just too... the culture is just completely different. People are different. Topics are different. It was just not a good fit. So luckily I did that in the first year of my master's. So by the time the second year came around, when we were graduating, I realized that maybe I need to find a different path. And I got lucky enough to get connected with someone from IDEO in the Munich office. And that's where I learned about the business design. So literally it was like this. So my professor connected me with someone working there, and then this person working there connected me with the business design director. And basically he told me, hey, nice to meet you. Can you send me your business design portfolio? So I didn't know what business design is. B, I didn't know what portfolio is, because as a business student, you don't have a portfolio. So I scrapped something together quickly, just trying to make it look like I knew what it is. Luckily, I got an internship, and that, started the beautiful journey in the design. Very bumpy in the beginning. I didn't know anything about design. Like, people talking about empathy, wireframes. What is that? Like, why are we not talking about money?
Yeah.
But I totally dig it. And it was a really nice experience. And after that, when I was there, I started to realize that I was different. Like, if you go into a business school, you are just one of everybody's interested in business, but in a design agency, I was like, I was the only one, or like, there was a few of us who were interested in these topics. And then I started to realize that this is a problem, that we as a community, design community, we have a problem of working with companies, working with clients who think through numbers and through business terms and through these things. And we either, some people like don't want to even go into down that path, and some people are just not capable because design schools are just set up differently. So this is where the idea for the DMBA was born. And I guess I should stop here, not to go too far into into the story.
A lot of different direction pops up, different seeds. But let's start. You said something really interesting. Well, you said a lot of interesting things that I could pick up on. But let's start from the core, the basic. What is business design?
Business design is a design discipline that was created when agencies start to realize that it's not enough to only deliver things that are desirable, like concepts, design concepts, brands, wireframe, services that make sense for the users, but they needed to have a business logic as well. What's the business case behind? How would this fit into the existing processes? How would it fit into strategy? Does it need a new strategy? How would it fit with the business model? What are the numbers around it? So it needed a specific skill set of people who understand design and business to do this, to basically follow along in this approach, to design the business side of things alongside of designers designing the usual design concepts. So the things that business designers would usually do is, like, for example, in the research phase, we would also look at who are the competitors, what's their revenue size, what's their advantages, disadvantages, opportunities, threats. Then in the next stage, we would think about, okay, once we have this concept, okay, these are our users, but who are the stakeholders? Who are the suppliers? Who are, who else? I don't know, suppliers and other stakeholders in the value chain. Then, coming up with the business model for the concept, coming up with the business case for the concept. So what's the probable price point? How much do we need to sell for this to make sense, etc. So that, in a nutshell, it's a business design, but actually my definition is you're using design mindset and business tools to solve challenges.
Using design mindset
and business tools. Yes. For example, if you go to a business school, you would use business tools with the business mindset, which is completely different.
Yes.
You would take, yes. if anyone has worked with a business person, you know what I mean. It's like, It's a very deductive way of thinking. You have a problem and you quickly try to eliminate all the things that do not work to get to the one that's more realistic. And what we as designers love to do is like stay in that middle part, explore, think about all the options, go down the avenues that not necessarily make sense right away. So yeah, you apply this design mindset, so user centricity, embracing ambiguity, making it visual, to design business assets, business models, strategies, business cases, and so on.
Can you talk to me about, you're dropping a lot of gems here and there, and I need to pick it up and talk about it. Well, can you talk to me about the shortfall of this business people deductive approach to solving business problems?
Yeah, so I think everything has its own place. and time. Like, what business tools are really good at is if you have a functioning and successful business, in optimizing it. But especially, so not just the tools, but also the way the business schools are set up. They teach you, like, you're going to go in a big company and then you're going to be there, a cog, cog in the system. But as designers, what we do is we're not just cogs. We dream of things. We create stuff. We create from zero. And that requires a different type of muscle, different type of mindset. And that's not something that's being really taught that well in a business school. They will tell you that they teach you these things, like, hey, there is an entrepreneurship course, but it's mostly just the same thing packaged differently. Like, I'm going to use the deductive reasoning and business rationale to come up with the idea. There is no user research usually, and so on. Yeah. So that's what was the original question?
The shortfall of this deductive approach of business people.
So the thing is, if you do this type of thinking, if you apply it to an already existing and functioning business model, it works. But if you try to solve problems that don't have clear, like, underlying, how to say, like, when there is a problem, there is usually the thing that really makes this problem a problem. And how is this called? So it's not a hypothesis, not an assumption. It's just like
the cause for problem.
Yes, the cause. Exactly. So you're usually not being really rigorous with this way of thinking to go into the core and to really try to understand it that well. You're just kind of, with deductive reasoning, try to get to your solution as fast as possible. So the problem is, I think a lot of these solutions are like what I would call the local maximum and not like the global maximum. So this is in math, like, if you just look around, or maybe even let's just take it to our own experience. If you look around, what's the closest, highest hill you can see? I'm just looking at a hill. It's like, it's just right there. But I don't see that actually. If I just drove 10 kilometers away, there would be a mountain there, which is it's an analogy for a better solution.
That's lovely. That's very lovely. Because basically, let me summarize. What you're saying is that because of this deductive approach of business people, hey, if there is a problem, there must be a solution, and there is somewhat a linear relationship between these two. Is that I look at the first possible scenario to explain it, the hill in front of me, rather than zoom out and look at the broader picture.
In a way, yes. I mean, they would now come at me and say, this is not what we do. I think the big difference is that we as designers, we're more comfortable exploring the things that on the surface don't look like maximums, because they will inform us about something that could be the solution, the maximum.
That's such a beautiful way of explaining it. The way, like, I understand it is that business people often like use their left brain more than their right brain. Left brain sort of like have this like a logical aspect to it, that hey, there is a problem, let's solve it, there must be a solution. But the right side of the brain is sort of like a empathetic side of the brain, try to look at the texture, context, and the big picture. And often when you zoom out, you start seeing a lot of different hills around where you are.
Yeah. And I think especially if you're in your kind of role, when you deal with innovation, then there is a very clear case to be made that, one is, you should just use both sides of your brain, basically. You need to do analytical and you need to do, or what I like to say, you need to do qualitative and quantitative research, and this is how business comes together, or business and design come together.
Exactly. And one of the basically weaknesses of designers that they rely so much on the right side, and they often they're not using their left side.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I think ultimately what we think is going to happen is, hey, because everyone else already thinks so much about the everybody's using the left brain all the time. I'm just gonna take care of my right brain, and then it's gonna balance itself out. But if we look at really good design products, you need to balance these two perspectives in the concept phase of your solution. You can't do it again. You can't just ship something that is right brain great, but left brain inadequate, because after the fact, it's hard to go back and correct it. You need to build it in, like if you look at the Bauhaus products, these designers, they didn't just create beautiful furniture pieces and then they thought about how we will commercialize this or how is this going to get made in a factory. No, the very idea of this needs to be made in a factory on scale was baked into how these products look like. It has very basic shapes. It's a square, it's a triangle, it's a circle, has the most basic colors, yellow, blue, red, because those are the easiest to produce. So it comes together in a design. If you use both sides, it shouldn't be like an afterthought.
That's beautiful. And that's a case to be made for designers to collaborate more intensively or more closely with the business people, or better, go extra mile and train and develop their left side brain capabilities to be able to think about both sides of the equation, the harmony, the form, the pleasure, the aesthetic, the ease of use of the design, as well as the impact for the business.
Correct. And obviously the best thing is to have it balanced. But I think if you went into design, you probably went into design because you're more right brain focused than left brain. So my personal mission is for more of us to at least attempt to ask attempt to ask business questions. We don't need to necessarily come with those answers up ourselves, but at least being curious, using our empathy, not just towards design and users, but also using this empathy towards how does business work? Who are the competitors? What does that mean for you? Who am I designing not just for, but against? These kind of questions.
Who are we designing not for, but against?
Okay. So what I mean with this is you can, when you're designing for, you mean like I'm designing for the user. Okay, that's great. But what other solutions are competing for the same brain space of the user? So who are you designing against? What other products and services are fighting for the same space in the user's brain? So who are you designing against? Who are the competitors?
And by applying empathy for competitors, meaning that we go extra mile and see and play the devil advocate, or still man their case, how can we make this product or this competitor's product better? What's they're lacking? What they are really good? So basically putting our shoe in our foot in their shoes to understand their strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. That's it. Because you need to...
okay.
I mean, the way to think about it is like when a user is thinking of a problem, they are thinking in like not industries, but they're thinking in what can solve my problem. Just to give an example, right? So let's say I want to get from Berlin to Munich. So if I'm a designer working for an airline, I'm thinking, okay, I am just competing with other airlines, for example. But you're not. You're competing with car companies. You're competing with bus companies. You're competing with all the different solutions that are for these rental companies. So all different solutions that are in this space. So your job is to really understand what the user is experiencing and for what type of user, for what kind of need would your solution be the best, and to amplify those features, to amplify that experience for that particular use case. So yes, within, let's say, again, you're working for airline, you need to understand how within airlines you're better, but also to understand how vis-a-vis other non-traditional competitors you are, faring. So amplifying those features that make sense and disinvesting in those that do not make sense.
Once I read a quote from CEO of Netflix, and he was saying that everyone thinks our competitors are Apple TV, Amazon Prime, HBO, and traditional TV, but our real competitors is Saturday nightlife activities in a city.
Restaurants,
And
concerts.
that answer stood with me, and it took me a long while to understand what he said, but it has so much depth to it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and again, we pride ourselves as designers, like we have the user perspective, we think this through, but then we fall on these things sometimes. Like, okay, we understand the user, but if we really want to understand it, we need to understand all the options they have available for a certain product or service we're designing, and then understand what makes those competitors good and bad, and how we can be truly different. One of the worst things we can do is like, oh, we find a user need that can be nicely met with a new concept, service, product, but then it plays into the advantage of another product that's already out there, because then you could be gone in a few weeks. And that's what has happened to a lot of social platforms in the late 2010s, copying Facebook, or not really copying. Facebook copied their features because they just already had the mass that was needed. So yeah, things like that.
To your point, something that I bump into, and what you said sparked that in my mind, is that a lot of UX designers or even product designers, they think, given that we are designing application, we are design thinkers. And that's not true. You cannot be a design thinker if your sole obsession is the user in front of you, the hill in front of you, and not looking at the broader picture.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's something that you touched upon, and I want to get back to it. I think it's so fascinating to me. Is you said like designers start doing research and try to understand the business strategy first and foremost, and then they get into the design of the business, like the revenue model, sort of like all the activities that you need around the business to complete a business model, right? And I really would love to get your take on what is a business strategy, like how one should go about like having an understanding about their own, how, like, if a CEO is listening to this, how should they think about their business strategy, and how should go about crafting a business strategy?
Yeah, it's a topic that's very close to my heart and mind. Strategy is one of the most misunderstood concepts, and also one of the most misused words in business.
Yes.
So when people talk about strategy, they talk about different things. So whenever you want to talk about strategy, you need to understand what the definition is that you're discussing. And I got in a few Twitter fights with people who just try to educate their followers that, hey, strategy is nothing, it's nothing more than a fancy word for a plan. And that's as far from a strategy as possible, because strategy requires a plan, but it's not a plan. So what is strategy in the context of business? In the context of business, strategy is your plan to differentiate through deciding what you will invest in and deciding what you will not invest in. So deciding what you will do and deciding what you will not do. And it's a very simplistic definition. So basically we're saying, here are the things we're going to do, and here are the things we will not do. But in this simple definition lies the catch, which is most of the companies never decide on the things they will not do. They only decide on the things they will do. And then you soon become like just run around and you do all kinds of things without really knowing what you are and who you are. So the best way to think about the strategy, if I would need to condense it to one word, is strategy is trade-offs. So if you are making a strategic decisions, it is by definition, it needs to be a trade-off decision. For example, a trade-off in the product design of cars would be, we're going to make very comfortable, big, spacious car, so luxury, versus speed. So you can't have a big car that's also fast. Well, somebody will come at me and say, yeah, but there are SUVs that are fast. But that's still true, but still the core trade-off is the bigger the mass, the slower the speed. That's an example of a trade-off in a car industry. But then another, to give you an example from, let's say, maybe more well-known, let's say Google versus Apple. So Google is a open system, and they are a software-first company. And you can see this in the way they do all of their business. Versus Apple, Apple is a hardware company and closed kind of environment. And what this closed environment means is that they can much better control their UX. So the user experience between their product is just much more seamless, but that's why they have lower market share, because by definition, fewer people are going to use it. And Google on the other side, for example, opened up their Android, their operating system for phones, and this just simply meant that there's going to be, more Android phones out there than iPhones. So they were basically trade-off was open system with scale or closed system with quality. And there are all kinds of trade-offs like this. So the best way to think about it is, when I'm designing something, can I list out 5 interesting trade-offs in this project? And usually it just starts with simple words. I don't know, cheap, expensive, closed, open. I don't know what else. Premium, affordable, organic, scientific, these kind of things. So these are very simple words, but they could take you into different paths. And you should know what your decision is on these and just try to get a good set of decisions there and stick with those.
That's lovely. That's so simple. I understood it. Because I've asked a couple of folks on the podcast about the strategy, and they went on a tangent, rightfully so. I don't want to say like they didn't bring it home, but your definition, I'm like, okay, I can work with this.
Yeah, I mean that's all. I mean, everyone in the company should understand strategy of that company, and in good companies, that's why they're good companies. Everyone inherently understands that. So you won't have a designer working for an Apple and saying, why don't we open up our operating system? Because it's super clear why we won't do this. Or you won't have a designer working for Ryanair, or I don't know, one of the low costs telling you, hey, why don't we have business class? Well, it just doesn't fit our strategy. Like you can see those things when it's clear, then everyone in the company can pull in the same direction. And that's the job of a leader, to be very clear on those trade-offs.
Oh man, that's lovely. That's so on point with the strategy. Now I can think in that lines really clearly. So basically, something you said, and I would love for you to just dig deeper on that, is you said that a lot of businesses, they don't have a strategy, and part of having a strategy to know what we are not going to do.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
It's very important because there's many more things that we can do that we can do. So when you start, you have a feeling that you can do everything, but in reality, if you spread yourself thin, then you don't have any clear focus. And all that strategy and success in anything is knowing what you're doing and knowing what you're not doing. As soon as you start doing too many things, and you can see these with certain companies, then you basically have gone above this threshold, and the whole story and the whole strategy doesn't work anymore. So when I say you need to stop somewhere, that doesn't mean that, if you have hundreds of products, that's too much. Like Amazon has millions of products on their shelves.
Yes.
But it's very clear what they do. Their strategy is e-commerce. They're not trying to go around and be, brick and mortar in every single country. Yes, they're testing something in Seattle with these self-checkout stores, but still, it's very clear what they are doing. when companies are not clear what they're doing, what they start to do is they basically invest resources into things that they shouldn't be investing in. An example of that is like you had premium airlines. I mean, actually, at the beginning, and I'm talking a lot about airlines today, but it's simple to get from the strategy perspective. And this story is a very interesting one. So initially, you only had the national, basically airlines. It was so expensive to buy airplanes and to run airlines that it was just every country had its own national airline. And the next thing that happened was, it was private companies, so no longer just the governments owning the companies. And at that stage, all of these companies were what we would today call traditional or premium airlines. So this is Lufthansa, this is I don't know, like Qatar, like all of these traditional airlines. And then around 1980s, a new player came in called Southwest Airlines. And they basically popularized and revolutionized and introduced the low-cost airline, which meant they were just selling direct to consumer. They only used one airplane because that allowed them they didn't have to train their crew on how to operate different airplanes. They would only fly direct. They didn't have a hub, all of these things. And then what did the traditional airlines do? They did what every company who doesn't have a clear strategy does, which is they tried to copy. So at the same time, they tried to follow two different strategies, which are trade-off. They tried to be premium and cheap. And what happened? Almost all of them went bankrupt. So if you look at not like Qatar and these, because these are pretty recent, but like if you look at almost all the US airlines, they all went bankrupt for one reason or another. But like at a certain point, they were all copying this low-cost strategy from Southwest Airlines. And you just can't do it. You can't be premium and low cost at the same time because it's a trade-off. They tried and they realized after some unsuccessful years that it can't be done. And then they just went back to what they know how to do, which is be a premium airline.
Wow. Okay. That's very clear. So basically, a business strategy offer a sense of identity, a clear direction for the business to take. A strategy is not a plan, is a North Star that tells you, hey, we are going this way, we are this and we are not this.
Yeah.
And based on this understanding, we can see it and create a set of action points, aka plan, to achieve that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And the easiest way to visualize it is if you are clear with your strategy, it's a one blank sheet of paper where on the left you have do's and on the right you have don'ts. And if you can clearly write this in like 5 points, you have a strategy.
So the same example that you gave, are we premium? Are we affordable? Are we open? Are we close? Are we black? Are we white? And da da da.
Exactly. You're looking for these trade-offs and you're leaning fully into one of these options.
Okay, so then if I want to design a business strategy, it means that I need to know my market really well. I really need to understand the future trends, competitors, our company DNA and capabilities to be able to tell what we are and what we are not.
Correct. You need to know all of it. And this is an interesting point here is this business strategies from business people usually stems only from the business perspective. This means we analyze competitors. This is what they invest in. We will invest in similar things if they're not that smart, or if they're smart, we're going to invest differently. Where design perspective comes in, and this is what designers can bring to the table, is say, actually, I've done the research. That's why we need to stop investing in this and start investing in this. I'll give you a story.
Please.
So there is a hotel chain called Citizen M. Have you heard of it or maybe even stayed there?
Citizen M, no.
Yeah. So Citizen M, I think it's a Dutch brand. And what they realize is what hotels invest in is like a lot of the features that are not really important to a specific segment. So Citizen M is targeting younger generation of tourists and business travelers, but mostly business travelers, who basically value having a really nice room in a good location. So what does that mean? This means we can cut out a lot of the things hotels invest in. So what if we cut out the gym? Do these people, are they willing to make this trade-off? Okay, nice room and nice location without gym? Yes, I'm willing to do that. Are they willing to also not maybe have concierge service? Yeah, actually they don't care about it at all.
Yeah. No.
Do they care about check-in? Actually, they would prefer to not have a personal check-in. They prefer to do it digitally.
Yeah.
What else? Do they really want to have, I don't know, a breakfast in the hotel, or they actually love to explore outside, outside restaurants? Actually, they don't care about the restaurant either. Do they care about how big the room is, or is the bed really important? What if we make the rooms really small, maybe like 10 square meters, but we make we invest in really nice beds and maybe even nice views from those beds. And funny enough, that's exactly what they did, and they're super successful. So they found these interesting trade-offs from the user perspective, because they understood that preferences of users have changed, but hotels still invest in outdated, for that specific segment, in outdated activities, outdated investments, and they came up with a really interesting strategy / product / company.
So they zoomed in on a very lucrative target group, target market, buyer persona, what have you, and say, okay, instead of serving to all sort of people, let's try to really serve this target market.
Right.
And really get it right.
Yeah, and that's the only way to even have a certain advantage, more or less, these days, right? We need to know who you're serving and what combines these people. What do these people have in common? What is their common religion, so to say? What do they value? What do they think? So that you can create an interesting product for them. Yeah.
Man, that's lovely. That's a crash course on business strategy. And I think out of the 75 episodes that I have recorded, you brought it home like no other person did. I want to get to the at least 40 minutes in. We really didn't discuss about what you are doing on a day-to-day basis. And I think, and fun fact for you, Alen, is like a lot of folks that are listening to this are designers, up and coming designers. And I really think this is a very fresh education in the market, because believe me, I've seen a lot of online design courses with designers, and they worth not one of my cents in my pocket, literally. And talk to me about the motivation or the reasons behind founding Design MBA. And I think our folks listening to this by now, they have some ideas, but I think let's elevator pitch. Let's start from there and delve into the reasons.
The elevator pitch is never hear this doesn't make business sense ever again. That's the elevator pitch. So what happens a lot of the times, and what I've seen on projects, is us creating great concepts that make sense from the user perspective, from desirability perspective, and then getting and talking to a client or to a team within a company, and they just look at you blankly like, okay, that I don't care, like that's great, but is it gonna make money? And we as designers, we pride ourselves like, oh, that doesn't matter, like people actually want this, and that's why we need to build it. But it's not true. I think what makes successful products and successful companies so successful is that they can do both. They can create value and they can capture value. And what I saw in working at design agency and working with designers who come from more traditional design backgrounds is that we so over-index on what we think design is, that then we fall short in our careers, because when we talk to non-designers, they don't get us. We speak different languages, and then they are looking for a translation. It's like, yeah, thanks, but how does that help me? Because we like almost never you see designer with slides of like, oh, here is a business model, here is how it fits into strategy, um, here's how we're going to generate profit and so on. And these are all the topics that are very important. And without the business there is no product. I mean, without the business there is no customer, and without no customer there is no business. So both sides need to be catered to. So what we do is basically just try to equip designers with the business knowledge they need to have, because there is some basic fundamental business ideas that if we just acquire them, will just help us design completely differently. And we don't need
100%.
to, we don't need to do a full MBA and go through accounting and macroeconomics and all of these things. It's just about understanding some basic things and being able to ask better questions.
100%. 100%. Even let's not go that far. There are a lot of UX designers I met and worked with. They don't have an understanding of how costly the solution that they are designing is from the standpoint of development.
Yeah.
And I've mentored a lot of UX designers, and some of them express their frustration with their PM and their boss, and saying to me, hey, no one understands me, no one takes my design seriously. Then in a couple of instances, I went through their designs because I was very curious, right? Why is that the case? And I realized, oh, actually, no one here is wrong. The designers should be frustrated because they are putting a lot of energy into this thing and trying to design something really cool, but because they are not guided properly, often the startups, they have a team of designers with no lead and no mentor, so they're not really guided. And the other side is they have concerns too. It's like, we really don't understand this design. This design is very costly. And often what happens in my experience as a mentor is that the PM had to go and get the design, chop it down into something that is they would go extra mile to turn that design into something producible.
Yeah. And it's basically just being first curious about how much it costs to do something. And once you come up with a suggestion, to also give an estimate. So the examples you're giving are the cost estimates. And you may say, I have no idea how much this costs. Well, I think we should have an idea how much it costs. And yes, so what we're saying is we don't know, but how can we learn? So the same way we learn about design and about new trends, how to use Figma and so on, we have colleagues from other departments that could give us the data. So maybe we go and talk to the PL. So before we pitch the PL, we actually ask them, how long does it take to develop this kind of feature? How long would this take? How much did that cost? And you won't believe how happy they will be to actually share those things, because then they're not used from designers asking these questions. So when you are, they actually have a feeling, oh, they finally are trying to also understand my side of the story. So it's not even that much about really having this data as it is about just being empathetic. And when you have an experience like this, like, hey, I pitched this and it didn't go through, not being frustrated and saying like they don't understand me, blah, 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 but like, do I understand them?
Yes.
Like, can I talk to them and understand what really happened and getting to the bottom of it and basically talking it through?
It's beautiful. Do I understand them? Let's just start from that point. Then in the next step, we can ask this question: do they understand me? Because I think that's a much more effective career strategy for designers to start to take responsibility about the conflict that they are in with other team members, to say that, okay, probably I am the problem, right? Because I think it's a very healthy attitude take the problems head on and say, hey, if there's a disconnect here, it's probably, let me take all the responsibility. And if I take all the responsibility for this problem, then I go extra mile trying to understand it.
Yeah. So it may be the case that it's not your fault, but it's always better to assume that, hey, I'm not a victim, I'm the actor here. So let's just
Yes.
figure out what I can do. So it could be you're dealing with a really weird boss in a really weird company, but that's not the first assumption you should make. The first assumption you should make is going to learn something from it. If you see after 4 or 5 iterations of you really trying hard and trying to take a step towards them, it doesn't work, then maybe you should, change your job or whatever. But if that's not the case, I mean, if you didn't try and really try to understand, do I understand what has already been done to solve this problem? Do I understand the KPIs that they have to measure this? Do I understand how fast do we need results? Do I understand who they report to and how they report to? Do I understand like these basic questions of how the company works, so I know what the incentives of that person that I'm pitching to or presenting this to understand all these things? If the answers, and most of these answers are no, you still have homework to do. And yeah, it's still an easy, I mean, what I'm trying to say is like, we don't need to lose the thing that makes us designers, which is the empathy, it's the user centricity, it's our aesthetical eye and so on. But if now we are like, if this is a continuum and now if you're like fully on the user side, this is bad, because even though everyone else is on fully on the business side, this is not gonna cancel out. It's just you're gonna be on an island. It's more about how can I build a bridge so I know how to talk to them, these people who are on the business side, so I can still create nice designs, but I know better how to explain them.
100%. Alen, if folks that are listening to this podcast wants to join Design MBA, what can they expect from the Design MBA program? How long is it? What kind of curriculum you go through them? Just like overall understanding of the program.
Right. So first of all, it's an online education, so it's an online program, and we organize it twice a year. So it's organized in something called cohort-based courses. So it's once a year in spring and once in autumn. And the reason we do it this way is because we wanna, like, we're building a community experience. So when you join, you're not alone there. There's a timeline. It basically lasts 6 weeks, and you're put in a group of other 50-ish designers around the globe. And then there is a whole journey we take you through. And basically what we do is we go through 6 weeks of 6 different basic, almost fundamental business concepts relevant for designers. So we go from the outermost, which is we call the business ecosystem. So this is like, do I know who I am designing against? So understanding the competitors, understanding the value chain, the basically the landscape that I am in. This is week 1. And then week 2, we go into understanding the business strategy. So we talked a little bit about it today. Then the 3rd week is understanding business models. Do I understand how my company or a company or my client basically generates money? What is the flow of data? What is the flow of goods? Do you understand, like, is this, like basically all these intricacies of the business model that not may, but do have an effect on my design. Then the 4th module is us using numbers. So prototyping with numbers. This is one of my favorite topics. It's like you can use actually numbers as a design tool. So we go through that. So how to do this, because you can design beautiful services by also playing a little bit with numbers. And then in week 5, we talk about metrics. So how do I understand business metrics and design metrics? How do I correctly use them? How do I use them to estimate the value that I'm creating? How do I then pitch this back to my colleagues? How do I measure my success? How do I measure the success of my projects? And then in week 6, we talk about soft skills. So once you have all of this knowledge, how do you get into the right meetings to have the impact that you want to have? So the curriculum is these 6 weeks. The way we teach it is each week is one of these modules. So we start the week with giving you access to the pre-recorded material. and there's then a case study. So there is a case study that you need to apply this knowledge to, because what we have learned is that we don't learn best when we consume content, but we only learn it when we apply it.
Right.
You know, when you pick up a book and you read something and you feel like, oh, this makes a lot of sense, and then try to apply it to yourself and you're like, I'm lost. Like, so we want to take you through this experience, like learning, feeling great, applying it, feeling stuck, having a call with us on Friday, which is a co-working call, and then getting you unstuck, you finishing an assignment, and then on Monday having a reflection call where basically we show you how we would have done this assignment, so you have another loop of learning. So here's how a mentor, because like each group has a mentor, one of those is MI, for example, and then we basically take you through this week's content and give you also the reflection piece. And then this is repeated basically 6 times.
Wow. So it's going to be intense 6 weeks. Let's get to work type of education program.
Yeah. So the very first version of the MBA was very hands off. It was like, here's some content and do with it what you want to do. And you know what the result was? 0. You know, like people consume this content and they take it as infotainment. They watch videos, it's like a Netflix show. I'm just going to binge it and that's it. And then they never apply it. So, and as designers, we wanted to design a nice product. So we said, okay, how can we turn it into something that actually has an impact? So I'm very happy to say that we have 97% completion rate. So almost everyone who joins the course actually finishes it. And that's one of the proxies, KPIs that we use to see if people actually get value out of it. So there is a very clear schedule, very clear format that forces you, that supports you to apply this knowledge, to learn, so that when you get out of these 6 weeks, you actually feel really empowered to use this on your own projects and in your own work.
This is a very exciting program to me. I think by the curriculum that you broke down, I would love to invite you for another topic, for another podcast, to talk about prototyping with numbers, because I think there is a lot of value in that, because there is a lot of designers do prototyping. They're proud of their prototypes, but they don't know how this prototypes is contributing to business at large. They just prototype because their PM told them to do so. And then they conduct these usability testings, again, clueless about how to interpret the data and what to make of it. So I think there is a huge issue, in my opinion, that designers, they are proud of their prototyping skills. So look at it as a craft, but prototyping can be looked from a different angle, that is a scientific angle. How can I improve the business with the prototypes that I'm making?
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice things about design is that you can see it as a de-risking tool for making decisions. And if you just switch the way you talk about your design from, hey, here is what I made, to here is what I tested, so we are de-risking your decision, you're going to get much more buy-in. So that's one very easy thing you can do. So I think there's nothing wrong with just being proud of our usual prototypes. What prototyping with numbers does is just uses different type of tool to prototype. So we use spreadsheets, for example. And it's not always about estimating the value, but sometimes you can use numbers to design the service itself. So I can give you an example if we have time. So
yes, please.
For example, let's say that you're dealing with a client that has a huge problem with maintenance. So let's say they have a hardware product and one of the examples in the course is basically bikes. So let's say that there's a company who tries to sell bikes around the globe, and they're selling them directly to consumers. Another question is, how will people who buy these bikes around the globe get their bikes maintained, serviced once a year? Who's going to oil the bike and so on? It is a good question. Like, how do we solve that? So part of that solution that usually we would do is we say, okay, let's open up, I don't know, let's partner up with shops around the globe. Or maybe another idea is what if we have bike doctors? Just the way, I don't know, Uber has its own drivers, we could have doctors. And then the very next question that your colleague or client is going to have, how many of these people do we need? How many doctors, how many partners do we need? It's a question that where usually we as designers, we just freeze. And we shouldn't freeze because this is a design question, right? It's a design question of the amount of service points we're going to have, because it has a huge impact on how we will design the service. If I'm going to have 10 of these around the world, I'm going to design it completely differently than if I need to have 1,000 of these. So it's a design question. So again, usually you would freeze, but with prototyping with numbers, what we can do is break it down. We can say, okay, this is the amount of bikes we're hoping to sell. This means we would need, okay, this is the amount of bikes that's on the roads right now. And if we were hiring these bike doctors, this is how many hours per year they could work. So we divide these two numbers and we get roughly at the number of doctors or mechanics that we would need. And this gives us a nice ballpark to work with.
And that's how you prototype
a service.
Prototype a service.
Yeah.
On the spreadsheet, low fidelity spreadsheet level.
Yeah, I mean, to give you another example, it's much closer to designers. It's like, let's say you want to have a design agency, and let's say, hey, I want to have 5 million in revenue with my agency. How are you going to do that? So again, it's a service design challenge. Like, okay, to have 5 million revenue, I need to sell, I don't know, let's say I can sell one project for, let's just keep it simple, 500,000. I know it's a lot, but let's just keep it simple. So this means I need 10 projects a year. Yes. So how long is that project? 500,000. So a 500,000 project probably lasts at least 3 to 6 months. Let's say it's 3 months. Okay, this means I'm going to have overlapping projects at the same time. So what does that mean for how many people I need? So you get into all these details of like, in order to reach 5 million, I will need to have this many employees. This means my profitability will be very bad. For example, I shouldn't do it. It's better if I stay on this level. And again, numerical prototype that helped you save a lot of time and prototype your service, or in this case, also venture.
And there's these questions. I mean, you brought this really nice example about agency, because I run an agency and I've done this calculation. I have to do it often, not often, but like I have this every 6 months. I need to go look at the numbers, see what we are doing, because scaling design agencies are really difficult. It's excruciating. Just a human intensive operation. So this example resonated with me a lot, because just like sitting with these numbers and playing around with it for like 30 minutes could have certain understandings or insights that help me to make better contract decisions.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, that's the whole hope. Is if you play out, I mean, would you go out and build a house without playing with numbers? Hopefully not. It's the same thing here. Like, you want to understand the costs that go into this as much as possible before even committing to this cost, to see, does it make sense for me to hire one more person? Can I actually get enough work for them? Or also having an understanding of what are the big springboards. So like, maybe if I have just 6 people in the agency, then I just need to sell 2 projects per quarter. But as soon as I have the 7th person, now actually it makes more sense to have 9 people, because I won't be able to fill like that many spots. Like it could be you have these jumps in your service offering. So yeah, playing with these things, playing with numbers is really useful. And maybe a lot of people approach it in the wrong way, which is like they deal with very specific, very bottom-up numbers, but you can make it playful, which is like, hey, I want to reach this number. I want to reach this revenue with this profitability. So how can I do that? And then you basically create a scenario that helps you achieve your goal. and then you go and test assumptions. So you can flip it around. So you don't have to start from like, this is my reality, but you can start with this is my goal and work your way back with numbers. And that's a more playful way to use them.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I would love to talk to you about this offline. But to close this, I want to get your take on the reality of design market. I was on a discussion panel last Thursday, and there were about 150 designers participated. They joined, and we were having this discussion about the future of design market, saturation of the design market. It wasn't a relaxed environment. Everyone was worried. Let's call it like this, right? So how do you see the world of design changing with the advent of AI, all these things that we are hearing? And you're running this design MBA. How do you see, because I think there is a lot of I don't want to ask a leading question. How do you see the role of, how do you see the effect of, do you think there is, so what's your prediction of the future of design market? I think that's my first question.
Related to AI or just in general?
Just like seeing everything that is coming to us, AI. How do you see the role of designer? Do you think the designers get, replaced, or do you think there is hope for designers by expanding their roles or expanding their understanding of businesses and like find a better footing, or like increase their defensibility against all of this?
I think as with every other technology, there's going to be some disruption, I think the ones who will get most disrupted are the ones doing the, let's say, most low-level work, like, Fiverr type of design jobs, like logos for $50, these kind of things. And I think it's just going to push our whole industry into like, we need to mature more as thinkers. We need to be able to think about more things than just the design side of things, to be able to bring different perspectives in to take better decisions. So I see it as a positive, because it will help us be more productive by using these tools, and B, it will just push us to be more strategic. And I think I'm very hopeful, because I think with the advent of AI, also there's going to be more tech products, more tech involved, and this is a nice design challenge also. Like, a lot of the user interfaces are going to change from this is how you click buttons into how do I chat with these things. So it's a lot of work for designers to do. So I'm very optimistic. It's just for those, I think general designers are also cool with learning and discovering new things. So I think we are well positioned to benefit from this. I'm quite optimistic.
Wow. I couldn't end the podcast better than this. Thanks a lot, Alen, for this boxing and wrestling and back and forthing with me. It was a pleasure. Really, truly, I learned a bunch of new things. Thank you.
Thanks, Behrad. It was a lovely chat, and thanks for inviting me, and lovely to getting to know you and all the listeners.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.